Morning, everybody. Can you hear us all right? Don't need subtitles, no? Can we all turn our phones off? If we haven't already. Believe it or not, they aren't life support machines. My name's Dave Anderson. I've been given the privilege of chairing this meeting today. I'm classed as the moderator, not the chair. It's an opportunity for candidates to answer the questions that you've put in, and I can tell you there's been more than 100 questions put in today. And we've tried to make members have all drawn lots, the candidates have all drawn lots to see who goes first. And you can see the order in which they run. So that's Kaya first, then Lisa, then Becky. For the second question, I will start with Lisa. Third question, start with Becky. If I get it wrong, keep us right, please, will you? There won't be any opening statements, but they will have a chance at the end to do 2 minutes to sum up their feelings. They won't be interrupting each other or questioning each other or heckling their opponents, and I hope that nobody in the room does the same as well. If you do, and I won't use the Billy Bremner joke, it's not. They're very, very clear. You know, this is a community meeting. We want people to work together. This is about doing some very, very important stuff for our party and our country. Without any further ado, I will go on to I should have done this before. We had a load of questions on this, and you'll all, if you're from this part of the world, you'll realise why. What is your strategy to win back the so-called red wall constituencies? Okay.
Well, we need to win them back. They're traditional Labour seats, so we've got to win them back. And we've lost really good MPs not far from here. Laura Pidcock, I think, is here. Laura, thank you for coming. Phil Wilson and Helen Goodman. And there are a number of reasons that we lost those seats, some of them peculiar to the last general election, some been going on, I'm afraid to say, for many years. And we need to identify and address each of those reasons. I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 years in places that voted Leave, having conversations with people in their communities. And a pretty compelling message has come back to me about infrastructure and transport should be better, that jobs need to be secure and with dignity, and that people want to make decisions about themselves in their own place, whether it's a town or a region. We need to listen to that. And so I will sweat blood to win those seats back. I would only add this, that we also have to win in Scotland and in Wales and in the South East and the South West. And therefore, we need to focus on the whole of England, the whole of Scotland, the whole of Wales. We've got a mountain to climb. The sooner we start, the better.
Right, thanks, Keir. Lisa?
Well, we've been losing for a long time, but this was no ordinary election. Blythe Valley, Bishop Auckland, Sedgefield, North West Durham. Just like back home in Wigan, these are seats where people have voted Labour and their families for 100 years. So we've got to stop and understand why. It was in this region when I visited the Nissan factory during the referendum campaigning for Remain that I started to really understand what was going on. For 40 years, we've seen good jobs disappear from our communities, and with them, our young people, our spending power, the scars are visible on the high streets, the boarded up shops, the cancelled bus networks. And consider where it's for no one. That's why I say we need not just investment, but real power in this region to decide how that money is spent. That is how we're going to go out and convince those ex-miners and nurses who turned not just away from us, but to the Tories in their tens of thousands in this election, that we get it, that we'll fight for them, and that we will bring Labour home to them.
Thanks, Lisa. Becky?
Well, look, I'm from a red wall seat, and we have to start by understanding why we lost. This was a Brexit election, and I could feel the anger in my own community. Many of our Leave voters simply thought we were trying to overturn the result of the referendum, and our strong Remain voters thought we weren't going far enough. So our compromise was absolutely catastrophic. But we've got to recognise that we had some of the most transformational policies in that manifesto in a generation. And we got the messaging wrong, and we didn't sell those policies. But it wasn't our belief in wanting a better life for our communities that lost this election. And one thing that we mustn't do is retreat. Retreat back away from those policies, scale back our ambition, because that's what the Tories want us to do. They want to paint us as the establishment party, out of touch with our communities and in bed with an elite that wants to keep power away from those that we're trying to represent. And we can't fall into that trap. We have to have the big ideas, the visions of the future, from our green industrial revolution through to bringing many of our utilities back into public ownership, because that vision of the future will win the next general election, and it's our job as socialists to sell that.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, let's move on, please. The next question is, will you commit to net zero carbon emissions, and if so, by what date? Lisa first, please.
So I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a mess about this, because we are the party that has the proudest record on climate change. Before there was Becky and the great work that she did for the manifesto, there was Barry Gardner, there was me as the Shadow Energy and Climate Secretary that first called for a green industrial revolution 5 years ago. And before that there was Ed Miliband, the first climate change secretary and the world's first climate change act created by Gordon Brown. And before that there was the work of John Prescott. We have a really proud story to tell. But in order to convince people of that, we've got to go out and make it real. And for too many people across this country, when we talk about a green revolution, all they hear is that their energy bill is going up and their job is being lost. We've got to go out and convince people that a green revolution means better buses in Bassetlaw. It means clean energy jobs in Barnsley. It means a generation of young people powering us through the future using clean energy just like their parents and grandparents powered us through the last. We're speaking in a different language, but what we mean is the same. We shouldn't tie ourselves up in knots arguing about net zero by 2030 when this government isn't even on course to meet its target of net zero by 2050. Instead of seeing trade unionists booed at conference, I want to see us going out and booing the Tories and showing around this country that we can do better.
Wind up, please. Thank you. Becky.
Well, look, our manifesto committed us to making the dramatic reduction in emissions by 2030, a substantial majority that was feasible technologically and scientifically. And I'm proud to uphold that commitment that we made in that manifesto, because time is running out, but we still have time. And we developed a pathway to 2030, 30 things that needed to happen to spur on investment in industry, to bring our energy networks back into public ownership and tackle climate change, but ultimately reindustrialise huge parts of the United Kingdom. It would have brought over 80,000 jobs here to the North East. That's a vision of the future. That's a future for our children and grandchildren. It would have ushered in a new era of public luxury in our homes, insulating them and making sure that we eradicated fuel poverty at no cost to any individual household. So these plans were ambitious, but they were the biggest opportunity that we've ever had in a generation to completely reset our economy and tackle climate change at the same time. It was our NHS moment, and we've got to keep fighting for that. We've got 4 years now, and we have to push this government to take the action that's required.
Thank you. Chair.
Climate change is obviously the issue of our time, and we've got to absolutely tackle it. And the argument now has to be changed. We can't go on by saying something is good for the economy but bad for the environment. If it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the economy. That has to become the central argument. When we get to net zero, it is a very, very important question, and we committed to 2030. But there's a cost to losing an election. We just lost the first 5 years of that by losing an election. And if we lose the next one, the election after will be 2029. So it does need us to focus on what we need to do winning an election. It doesn't mean we can't do anything. Local authorities are doing a huge amount of work. Mayorals are doing a huge amount of work. I was in Bristol about 3 weeks ago where they're developing biogas buses. I actually drove one of them. This is a bus that's powered by the gas from rotting food in Croydon that's pumped to Bristol for the bus. It's fantastic. So local authorities we support, but the focus here has to be on the fact that if we don't win the next general election, arguing on this platform about the precise date for net zero is going to take us absolutely nowhere. If we lose another 5 years, we're going to struggle to get to 2030.
Okay, thank you. Right, thanks very much. The next question is, what support will the leader pledge to support our troops and maintain realistic manning levels? Becky, please.
In terms of defence spending, I think we didn't make the case loudly enough, despite the fact that we committed very strongly to uphold, I think it was a 2.4% of GDP level of spending on defence to protect our troops here. But we've also got to make the case for an ethical, internationalist foreign policy that's based on human rights, international justice, and the de-escalation of conflict across the world. And we need to play a positive role in doing that going forward. Now we have the most right-wing government that we've seen in a generation. We see a Prime Minister who's getting into bed with the likes of Donald Trump and escalating conflicts around the world that's not only putting our troops at risk, but putting our communities here in grave danger. And we've got to fight back against that. We have to have an ethical and diplomatic foreign policy.
Well done. Chair.
We need to have proper spending on our troops, and we need to look at the welfare of our troops, and I'd be 100% committed to that. The question is, what for in the modern world? We just left the EU. We stand again on the international stage, alone as the United Kingdom. What do we stand for? And at the moment, my concern is that under Johnson, we're going to be defined as the country that wants to deal with Trump and to sell arms to Saudi Arabia. That is not our country, and we have to make a counter-argument. It's for the Labour Party to say, on that international stage, we stand for internationalism. We've always been an internationalist party, solidarity across borders. And foreign policy should be underpinned by human rights, as should trade policy. We're going to have trade deals. What's the framework for that? So let's use this as an opportunity not just to have a discussion about our troops and defence, which we must have, but also to define again what the United Kingdom stands for in the 21st century on Labour values, not Johnson values.
Thank you. Lisa.
Well, it's the first duty of any government to keep the country safe. And so I agree with Becky that our troops need to be adequately funded. But the question is, funded for what? Some of the major challenges that we face in this country now come from cybercrime, come from the internet, come from terrorism and grooming that happens over the internet, and we are not adequately funded to do that. But it's not just about funding too. It's about international alliances and making sure that we have good, strong relationships with other countries so that we can tackle these shared challenges together and rise up together. I represent a town that sends a lot of young people off to war. Some of them, over the last few years, 2 of them have never come home again. I want to see those families better supported. It's a disgrace that veterans end up on the streets in our country and that their families have to go without. And I want to make sure that we revive the ethical foreign policy of Robin Cook so we are never again sending people off to fight unjust, illegal wars without the support that they need.
Well said. Thank you. The next question is, as prospective leader of the opposition, what action would you take to overcome the £440 million yearly loss of funding for UK sciences as a result of Brexit? Here.
Well, we have to find a replacement. Our science development and medical development is hugely important in this country, and it's all about the future. The funding until now, or a lot of it has come from the EU, as has the work. So in my constituency, we've got the Crick Institute, which is a fantastic institute, bringing together funding and people from across Europe to try to find prevention for cancer. And they're doing brilliant, brilliant work. And I don't think there's anybody, whichever way they voted, in the for people from this country to go and work in other places, because medical research, scientific research absolutely depends on it. So it needs to be part of a package about where we go next. But, you know, that ability to pull people together and funding together is so important to all of this that we need a proper strategy.
Thank you. Lisa?
One of the reasons I fought so hard for a Brexit compromise, even against the leadership of the party, was because I have a child in my constituency who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. He will die before he's 18 years old. And he was in line for a clinical trial in the EU, because this is a rare disease that you can't tackle in one country alone. He received a letter last March telling him that because we hadn't struck any kind of deal or agreement with the European Union, he's no longer eligible for that trial. And that is the end of the hopes for him and his family. So I believe in our continued participation, and just as I have over the last few years, I will go out and fight for it. I'll fight for the rights of scientists from this country to go and work abroad. I'll fight for the rights of scientists to come here. I'll fight for the structural funds to come back to our science and medical industries so that we continue to pioneer. Because this, in the end, is the way that we will lead the world. The Tories say we're a small island nation punching above our weight without ever stopping to ask why it is that we're punching at all. The Labour I will lead will reach out to other countries and lift us up together.
Thank you. Becky?
I'm very worried about the loss of funding to UK science, not least because of the damage that it's going to cause, but also because we're in an area unlike mine. 40 years ago, industries were stripped away. Those that remain still continue to struggle and bear the scars of what happened to them. So we've got to replace the funding as quickly as possible, but we've got to look beyond just funding for science. We need to look at wider industrial strategies. And it doesn't sound sexy when I talk about industrial strategies, but an industrial strategy is one of the key vehicles to us realising all of our aspirations. It means a good, secure job. It means whether you can afford to buy a home, go on holiday, have a car. It's our means to raise up the betterment of lives within our communities. Now, there are many ways to do that, and we had some great ideas in the manifesto, all the way through from the Green Industrial Revolution, through to a strategy for the UK steel sector, all the way through to science, and making sure that we were playing with the big boys. We were investing at least 3% of our GDP on research and development in the science sector. At the moment, we're on 1.7%. We're not even up there competing with industrial nations. So if we want to transform our fortunes, it's all about industrial strategy.
Thank you. Next question is, how will the candidates engage with young members and get more involved to stand for elected office? Lisa?
Well, I want those young members who've joined the party in recent years to know that they're not just welcome in the party, but they'll have a place, a value and a contribution to make. I was enormously excited to see young people in my constituency joining up at 16 and coming to the first meeting and saying that they didn't want to debate motions, they wanted to go out and make real change in our communities. And that is the Labour Party that I am determined to lead, one that is rooted again in our communities, not just signing petitions to MPs or railing against the Tories, but showing the alternative that we can create in this country. Through energy co-ops, through credit unions, through law centres, real action on the ground to change people's lives and not just at election time. You know, in the end, that is why everybody, I think, joins the Labour Party. It's why I joined at the age of 15, 25 years ago, because I believed in a better world. And I hate what the Tories have done to this country twice in my lifetime, but that's not why I'm Labour. I'm Labour because I know and believe that we can be better, and I'm prepared to go out and fight for it.
Thanks very much. Becky?
Well, I think we need to inspire all our members, whether they're young or old, and I want to see a democratic revolution in politics. And no one will trust us to do that if we can't even have a democratic revolution within our own party. And it starts with empowering our members. I don't want members to go to their constituency meeting and just talk about the minutes of the last meeting. I want them to develop the policies that will win us the next general election. And that requires comprehensive political and economic education to give them the tools to develop those policies in those meetings. I want to encourage them to become part of the social fabric of their communities, to educate in the way we did in the olden days, where we went into workplaces, into pubs and talked about politics and inspired people. But I also know we've got to respect our members. We've got to trust their judgment. And that's why I've said I'm in favour of open selections. I want our members to have the right to encourage the best of our talent to rise up through the party. We could have the next Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat in this room, and we need to let them rise up because that's our only vehicle to beat the Conservative Party if we choose the best of the best. And when we've got brilliant
Becky,
MPs, they'll be respected and rewarded by their members.
Yeah.
I welcome the fact we've got many more young people in the party, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, and I pay tribute to Jeremy Corbyn for his part in that. It's fantastic. We need to engage and we need to listen, and that means we need to think about ourselves. One of the things we did in my constituency was get hold of the names of everybody who'd come to one branch or ward meeting and never come to a second. And we got them all together in the top room of a pub, and loads of them were really young, full of energy, but they didn't like the way that we were doing our ward meetings. They wanted it done differently, and we had a room full of people. And we need to listen to that and change and make sure that if we're going to have democracy in the party, we actually have everybody's voice heard and that everybody feels that they want to come to our meetings and want to contribute to that. There are really important policy issues. I think getting rid of tuition fees was right in principle, but it also spoke to young people because it recognised that you're not just being educated for yourself, it's actually for the betterment of all of us. And so we need to develop those policies. And the other thing that we have to do, we voted for it now, I'm proud to say, votes for 16 and 17-year-olds. Don't ask people to get involved in politics if you don't give them a vote so that they can change what goes on. So give them votes as well.
Thank you. Thank you. You're doing well. Keep moving. How will you rise to the challenge of tax avoidance? Becky?
Tax avoidance. I mean, I think it's absolutely disgraceful that we have companies and individuals in this country who won't pay tax in this country. In fact, I think paying your tax here was one of the most patriotic things you can do. Because public services, whether it's education, whether it's our NHS, whether it's our public services and all of the things that they provide to our communities, they're the building blocks of aspiration. And we need to make sure that they're properly resourced, and we should never be afraid of making the case for people paying the right level of tax and for tax avoidance to be clamped down upon very quickly. And there's a number of ways we can do that. So firstly, we need a comprehensive anti-tax avoidance plan, and we have that set out in the manifesto, and I commit completely to the principles that John McDonnell has set out. Secondly, we've got to recognise that HMRC has faced huge cuts in recent years. They don't have the people that are on the ground that are capable of being able to take the action that's required to clamp down on tax avoidance. So we need to properly resource HMRC. Thirdly, we need to end the scandal where we've got people from the likes of PwC and these huge accountancy firms acting on a body that advises HMRC about tax avoidance and determines whether something is tax avoidance or not. It's like turkeys voting for Christmas. It's not acceptable. The whole system needs to be changed.
Yep. Clear.
Tax avoidance is out of control and it's a complete scandal, and everybody knows it. The classic example is Amazon. Last year, £10.9 billion was their revenue, and they paid 2% tax. How can that possibly be fair? So something needs to be done about it. When I was Director of Public Prosecutions and Head of the Crown Prosecution Service, we had a fraud division that prosecuted these cases. So I had 5 years of experience of this. I would agree with Becky that cuts to public services, to those that are policing and enforcing it, is part of the problem. I think we need to have a rethink about what we tax. We need to think whether we should be taxing revenue rather than profit, because it's too easy to move your profit to another country. And we need to be serious about international cooperation, because what these companies are doing is moving money and moving their headquarters and pretending their business is based somewhere else so that they can get taxed somewhere else. So all of that needs to be done. More money for our public services. Look at whether we should tax revenue and absolutely link up with other countries so we can do this with international cooperation. But there are billions of pounds at play. People challenge us on whether we're going to put income tax up or down. Compared with tax avoidance, income tax is peanuts. This is the real scandal. We've got to close this tax gap.
Right, cheers, Kate. Lisa?
You're scaring me a bit. I start from the stance that tax is a good thing. And if we're honest, we've been losing the argument about this for a long time. In fact, we haven't been making the argument. I really worried that when we labelled one of the most cruel policies a government has ever introduced, the bedroom tax, we won the battle, but we lost the war. Tax is the contribution you make to a better society, and we should be proud of it, and we should celebrate it. But to survive, it has to be fair and it has to be feasible. We can't keep squeezing working people's incomes. Where does money go that you earn at the top of the income spectrum? It goes into assets. So we have to bring wealth taxes into line with income taxes as a basic minimum to fund our public services. If we've got companies that don't pay their staff a living wage, then at the end of the year, before we even talk about the tax that they owe, we should ask them to settle that wage bill with HMRC. And finally, a few years ago, Amazon workers were found living in the woods in tents near Dunfermline because they couldn't afford housing. Last week, their owner, Jeff Bezos, spent $165 million on a mansion using his loose change. That's why I've said that for companies who are making a negative social contribution, we will introduce a social licence. If they want to expand, if they want planning permission, they want to trade here, they are going to have to show the positive impact that they're making.
Thank you. I'm going to read this one out in full because it's hilarious. Before I have to start fruit picking, will you continue to support WASPI? And there's an EDM hoping you can all sign it. Keir.
Well, this is one of the problems with these hustings and with the sort of questions that we get, because we're always asked to answer things yes, no, binary choices. And actually, we need to do both. We need a very serious, principled immigration policy. And the government is heading completely in the wrong direction, equating people's worth with what they get paid. And that is completely and utterly wrong. On the other hand, the WASPI women have suffered a grave injustice, which is why their cause is so powerful. What we need to do is concentrate, obviously, on what we put in our manifesto in 2024. But I actually reject this way of doing questions where it's got to be A or B, yes or no. We have to balance these things. We will have to look at what we can do in 2024, but both of these are an injustice. Injustice in the way that Johnson wants to deal with immigration, a complete injustice, but equally for the WASPI women as well. We're better than just putting these into binary questions.
Thank you. Lisa?
A few years ago, the WASPI women in Wigan came to see me and they said, you might want to support us because we've got a bit of a sting in our tail. Yeah. And they were absolutely right. But they're also some of the most formidable women that I've ever worked with. And you can learn a lot from the WASPI women about how they campaign. They do it with joy, they do it with energy, but they also do it with a seriousness of intent that has galvanised my whole community behind them. And I support them because I think for that generation of women, there was a real double whammy about having to work all their lives, pay into the pension pots, take time out to raise children, and then find that they had very little time to plan at the end. And we have to be honest that this wasn't just the Tories' fault, this was our fault as well, and we owe those women and we need to support them. And I was outraged when one of the Tory ministers said that the WASPI women should go and take up apprenticeships. I mean, that's about as good an idea as going fruit picking. But worse than that, what does it say to our young people? We've got a pensions crisis in this country. We have young people who are struggling to get work. We should be celebrating the fact that people can retire early or at the right age and then can go on and contribute all the things they want to contribute in their retirement, and that young people can get those jobs and pay into their own pension pots. If we don't stand up for the basic principles of fairness and consistency in pensions, how will we persuade the next generation to invest in their pensions?
Thanks,
That's
Lisa.
why this matters
Thank
to
you,
the whole
Lisa.
country. That's why I support them.
Right, good one. Becky?
So yes, I support the WASPI women. I think they faced a gross injustice. But what happened to them goes right to the heart of what we put in place in 1945 as a Labour government. The social security system told people of my parents' generation that if you work hard, if you contribute to our economy, you'll be looked after. You'll be able to retire on a fixed date and your life will be good. And these women did what was asked of them. They worked hard, they contributed, and when the time came for them to be looked after, that contract with the state was breached. The rug was pulled out from underneath them. And we can't allow that to happen. We've got to stand up against this because it's the WASPy women now. Who next? This is the erosion of the welfare state and the security system as we know it. And we need to stand up and fight for it with every fibre in our being in this party. So yes, I will continue to fight for compensation.
Okay, folks. The next one is from Joe, who works in a refugee settlement with people from Syria. What will you do to help the people of Syria, and how will you stop the atrocities that are ongoing? And it is Lisa to start.
Well, I think we need two things. The first is that we need a proper international response, and we need to be absolutely clear about the seriousness and toughness of intent with which we'll deal with this. It is not acceptable to use chemical weapons against your own people. It is not acceptable to use genocide and torture. It is not acceptable for the world, the international community, to abandon the Syrian people at the time when they need us most. So I want to see us stand up, and I want to see us take on those governments that are actually blocking international efforts to resolve the situation for the Syrian people. It's one of the reasons why I was critical of where we got to with our foreign policy in recent years, because I believe in standing with the Russian people, but that doesn't mean we're standing with Putin, the dictator who oppresses the Russian people. And Labour must remember our values again and have them run through the way that we approach foreign policy. But secondly, we've got to do far more to support Syrian refugees while they're here. And the demonisation of migrants is something I never thought I'd see to this extent in this country. We've got a Prime Minister who actively attacks people in this country from different races and backgrounds and immigration and different countries. And we've got to stand up. Labour has got to be the light on the hill for those people, because these are very, very dark times indeed.
Thanks, Lisa. Becky.
Look, we all saw those horrific pictures some time ago of the child who drowned on the beach. Is that here in the UK, we're not meeting our international obligations when it comes to saving people and providing a place of safety and security from those fleeing terrible conflicts across the world. And we've got a moral duty in the Labour Party to make sure that we meet those international obligations. But it is about having an ethical and morally set foreign policy as well. It's about us being a force in the world that looks to de-escalate conflict based on security, deepening relationships with other progressive countries around the world, respecting international law and institutions, but ultimately based on our values of peace, justice and human rights, and not engaging in arms trades with those countries who were abusing human rights. And I think we were right in the last manifesto to set out our principles on that basis.
Thank you. Claire.
What's been going on in Syria, I think, saddens us all profoundly, and it's been going on a very, very long time. We do need a proper international coordinated response. That's got to be based on international law with human rights at its heart. And everything we do has got to be based on objectivity on human rights. If there's human rights abuses, we call them out. No more looking at whether it's in our economic interests or our business interests, or whether it's a regime that we like the politics of. Human rights abuses are human rights abuses, and we should call them out wherever we see them, objectively. On refugee policy, this last government has been terrible. One of the first things that Johnson did since winning that election in December was to rip up the Alf Dubs work for unaccompanied children coming from Europe, some of whom will be Syrian. I've met children in the UK unaccompanied from Syria. He's ripped up that commitment. That is the nature of the man. We have to take him on that, and any Labour Party led by me and any government led by me will be absolutely committed to our obligations under the refugee conventions.
Thank you. Hang on a minute, folks. Before we go on, can somebody sort some water out for the candidates, please?
This is our human rights.
Lisa's going to drop.
Whoever it is.
Right, okay. This one's about medicals under PIP. I am a registered disabled person. Would a leader bring the government to task about the degrading medicals we have to face? And it's Becky to start.
The work capability assessment regime is one of the most dehumanising, degrading systems I have ever seen in my lifetime, which was which hand do you wipe your bottom with when you go to the toilet? You know that we've got to scrap this. So I'd scrap work capability assessments. I'd make sure that we had a system in place that respected those who needed support in living their life to the fullest. I'd scrap benefit sanctions, I'd scrap universal credits and make sure that we have a social security system worthy of the name, based on dignity and respect, there to support you when you need that support.
Well done. Yeah.
We need to frame this question because Boris Johnson sees welfare as a budget to cut. That's the lens through which he sees this. As leader of your party, I would see it as a way to support those that need the support that they need with dignity. The culture is completely wrong in those assessments and sanctions. It's all based on the perception you've got to catch people out rather than genuinely help them. It needs to be turned on its head. The culture is completely wrong. And it's even worse than that. 63% of assessments and sanction decisions are wrong. 63%, and you can't really appeal. In what other walk of life would you get away with 63% of your decisions being wrong? So the culture needs to change, the whole system needs to change. I agree, let's get rid of universal credit, get rid of assessments and sanctions, and let's change the culture. Dignity is a word we need to use much more in politics, and there isn't any dignity in social security at the moment, and we need to put it there.
Well done. Lisa?
I think the work capability assessment is intrusive, it's degrading, it's dehumanising. Like Becky said, it's one of the worst things that I've ever had to deal with. I had a rape survivor a few years ago who was told that in order to continue to get a benefit, she needed to go for a physical assessment with a non-medically trained member of staff. I had a man who was sanctioned for going to his mum's funeral and had to go without food for several months. I'd get rid of the work capability assessment. I'd get rid of the delays in claiming benefits. I'd get rid of the sanctions. Most of all, I'd get rid of the role of profit in this system. We should not be giving contracts to private companies to put profit before people and dehumanise people to this extent. And I would scrap universal credit as well. But I wouldn't just scrap it. I would redesign it and rebuild it from the ground up and give the power to do that to the people who actually use it. Because people in this system are not passive, helpless victims. They are brilliant human beings with value and with a contribution to make. And that is the difference that a Labour government must make, and that is the determination that I have to lead this party so that we give people real power over their own lives.
Yeah, thank you. The next one is, if selected, how would you work to ensure that end-of-life and palliative care is fully and specifically funded by the NHS? Keir.
Well, this is a very good question for me because a year and a half ago I lost my dad and we had to go through these very, very difficult decisions that people have to go through on end-of-life care. And just in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've lost my wife's mother. So these are intensely difficult questions. There has to be proper funding. It has to be done with dignity and care so people can make the choices that they need to make with their families. I'd like to see the funding. I'd like us all to have an honest conversation a bit earlier in life. I think for me, and this may be reflected in other people, I felt that when we had to confront this as a family, I wish I'd had the conversation earlier. I wish I'd been able to discuss with my dad exactly what he would have wanted. So I would want to put the funding in. I would like to say thank you, by the way, to all those that provide the care. They've been absolutely fantastic. A tribute to people coming from lots of different nationalities and places. But also, I think we all need a wider discussion about this so that we could all take these decisions in a better way than perhaps me and my family felt we did in the last few years. Thank you.
Well, living well also means dying well, and I think we need to fundamentally change our values as a country. We're living longer, that is a good thing, it's a thing to be celebrated, but it also means that there is no excuse not to have got this right, and we haven't got it right. My mother-in-law died in hospital a few years ago. Hospital is a terrible place to die, but if we're honest with what the Tories have done to our hospitals, hospital is a terrible place to be, full stop, at the moment. So we've got to get funding into our NHS and crucially into social care. That's why I say bring wealth taxes into line with income taxes, because we can't fund this through income alone. I want to see far more resources and support go into hospices. This is the great untold scandal of the amount of money that the Tories have stripped out of our hospices so that they're closing across the country. And finally, I would just say this about the workforce. When my stepdad died a couple of years ago, the Macmillan nurse who came to help our family was everything to us. He was a lifeline. And he said to my mum, I'll be here for you while this is happening, and I'll be here for you when it's over. And it meant everything to our family, and it continues to mean everything. We should support people properly. We should pay people properly. This is the mark of a civilised society, and we cannot afford not to.
Looking.
Until you or one of your family goes through this, you don't understand the crisis that our NHS is facing. You assume that these things are properly funded and you'll get the level of care that your loved one or yourself deserves. But that isn't happening despite our amazing staff. And there was a story that I read recently about a lady called Sheila who died at the age of 83 in Darlington Hospital after a series of delays. And her family said quite clearly, the NHS is at breaking point. It was bedlam. Now, the fact is that the Conservatives want to privatise our NHS. They want to drive us into a state where we have to have private healthcare just to get the quality of care that we deserve. And we can't let that happen. It's been happening for 10 years by stealth. Many of our communities don't know that it's happening. They don't know that many of our NHS services are actually provided by private companies. No private company should be providing services within the NHS, and we need to campaign for all NHS services to be in-sourced.
On a similar theme, what are your plans for bringing the NHS back into full public ownership? Lisa?
Well, one of the best summers that I've ever spent wasn't on holiday in a foreign place. It was a couple of years ago, standing on the picket line outside Wigan Infirmary with a group of porters, cleaners, caterers and administrators, mainly low-paid women who'd worked in the NHS all their life and had been told, because of the funding regime that the Tories had brought in, where you had to make efficiency savings, which we know just to be cuts, you had to meet these targets, and the hospital had to find a way to meet those targets, or it was going to get another financial penalty on top of it. So they took the easy option. They took those people, not the medical staff, not the doctors or the consultants, but those low-paid women, and they said, we're putting you into the private sector. And we said no. And so we stood up and we fought it with everything that we had. And one of my proudest moments was marching through Wigan Town Centre, watching people come forward and applaud us. A man with tears in his eyes who said, I remember the time before the NHS and I applaud you for everything that you're doing. We galvanised the public, we got them on side, but most of all, what we did was, in the end, we didn't just get them to back down, we got our Labour Council to step in with a bridging loan. And because of that, we didn't get the financial penalty. Those staff still proudly work for the National Health Service. That is the difference that Labour makes, where we are in power right across this country. Let's tell those stories. Let's celebrate it. Let's show what we can be.
Look, I think you know what I think. All NHS services should be provided by the NHS, and that needs to happen as urgently as possible. But we've got to tell the story to our communities. In 2010, a man called Andrew Lansley started to privatise our NHS by stealth. We broke up providers and commissioners. We created clinical commissioning groups. Many within our community thought, oh, this is a chocolate box vision of our GPs providing our services. But that's not what's happening in reality. And that breakup is being sped up at a very rapid pace at the moment. We need to end PFI, and we've been clear on that in the Labour Party. We need to insource as quickly as possible, and we need to resource the creation of that capacity within the NHS, where it's dwindled and has been starved of the ability to provide those services. But ultimately, we need to make sure that our communities understand that if we don't take this action, we're not going to have an NHS in the next 20 years. They've already started rationing services like hip replacements, knee replacements. You only get them in very, very severe situations. Hospital waiting lists are as long as your arm. And soon they will start rationing what they call luxury services. If it's not a life or death matter, you'll have to pay for it. And we don't need to walk into that, and our communities wouldn't ever trust us again if we didn't fight against it.
Well, I'm sure we all agree the NHS is incredible, and that it was the Labour Party in government that created the NHS, and they said it couldn't be done, and that's why it's so precious to us. It's under-resourced. My wife, and under-funded, my wife works in the NHS. Like everybody else in the NHS, she's there because of the service she wants to provide, but they're demoralised as a team because day after day after day, there's more work than they can get through. It's totally underfunded. We have to also integrate health with social care and mental health. We've been talking about this for a very, very long time. We need to do it. If we were big enough to create the NHS, we're also big enough to have a national care service and a properly funded mental health provision. We need also, if we're going to reduce the overall cost, to go to preventative care. Lots of illnesses and diseases can be caught earlier. That is fantastic, obviously, for the individual patient, but it's also good for the NHS in terms of funding. So big things need to be done. It shouldn't be done through private profit. This is a matter of principle. You shouldn't be making profit from other people's ill health. And therefore, we have to reverse what the Tories have been doing. And I agree with the others on the panel. And it's not just about making profit, because as soon as you privatise, something else happens. That is the workforce have their terms and conditions changed, and always for the worse. So it's principle, but it's also looking after the workforce. We have to reverse what the Tories are doing to our NHS.
Well done. Again, a related issue. Will you work cross-party to ensure that a coherent social care policy becomes law as soon as possible? Keir?
Oh,
sorry, it's Becky.
Not very good answer, obviously. I'll try better next time.
Becky?
I will, because we're going to be out of government for who knows how long. It could be 4 years, and social care is in crisis. Age UK estimate that up to 1.5 million older people aren't getting the care that they deserve. And what does that mean? It means in here in Durham tonight there will be people trying to put themselves to bed who can't cook their own meals, who can't wash themselves, and need that help desperately. We've also got to recognise that our social care workers are some of the most underpaid, undervalued workers in the United Kingdom. And when my parents need that care, I don't want them to be looked after by someone who hasn't slept all night because they're worried, because they can't pay their rent or their mortgage, they're not able to feed their children or heat their home. I want them to feel valued and secured and happy to come to work. So we need to properly fund social care. We need to be ambitious about it so that it's free for all. And we need to make sure that our social care workers are properly valued and properly paid.
This question's come up a lot in the Hustings, and every time it does, it's said that social care's in crisis, and that's because it is. It's in absolute crisis. And frankly, if you don't fund it, you can't fix it. And we've got to be clear about this. There are 100,000 vacancies in social care for jobs that aren't filled. By the way, most of those are at about £16,000. So this is another example why Johnson's immigration policy is going to be a disaster on top of a crisis. There are 1.4 million not getting the care they need. If that was in the NHS, that would be front page news. And this is the basics. This is about people having support they need. Food, washing, being able to go to bed. Actually, company for many people. Personal company provided through social care. So we need a national care service. After the war, we built the NHS. Now is the time for a national care service. In answer to the question, we won't be able to tackle this full on until we win a general election. I would work cross-party with anybody who will improve the lot of those in social care between now and the chance we next get to win a general election.
I said a few weeks ago that I would reach out across the political divide and work with other political parties and politicians from different backgrounds in order to try and solve this crisis, because I know from my own family that people can't wait another 4 years. We've lost a general election. We've got to show that we care and that we get it and that we're prepared to do that. I learned when I worked with child refugees before I came into Parliament in Yarlswood that you work with whoever it takes to get change for people who need it, because they cannot afford for you to stand at the sidelines and shout while they are engulfed with crisis. And we've got a Tory government that just this week said that the social care sector is a low-skilled profession. What does that say about the people who care for our elderly relatives, the people who care for our children? What does it say for this country that that's the sort of values that underpin the government that currently leads us? We can act now in Wales, where we're in government, in Greater Manchester, where Andy Burnham has powers over health and social care. We can show that there is an alternative, but we also have to show that we're prepared to be non-tribal about this and put the country's interests first. On all of the major challenges we face, whether it's social care or the climate crisis, Caroline Lucas is not our enemy in the fight against climate change, and we have to go out and show people that we get this and that we understand it and that we're going to take the fight to the Tories.
Thank you. Okay, different topic. What is your vision for the future relationship between the UK and the EU? Okay.
Well, I think the first thing we have to accept is that the argument that's torn families, regions, parties apart over the last 3.5 years, namely whether you'll remain or leave, is over. Yep. All of us have to accept that. We've now left the EU. And I think our party needs to let that issue go. The Tories fought about Europe for 40 years. We don't want to inherit their problem. As we go forward, we do need a close relationship with Europe, both for trading and other reasons. Most of our trade is with Europe. The Hitachi factory just up the road here depends on trade with Europe. So we need to fight for the right relationship with Europe, a close relationship with Europe, not just economically, but also cooperating on medical research and scientific research that we touched on before, and on education. So we now move the battle on and we focus on what Johnson's going to do. My big fear is that whatever he says, he will rupture our relations completely with Europe. He will then focus on a deal with Trump. And once you've gone down that slope, suggesting your public services aren't going to be in the mix is just wrong. They will be. And the economic model with Trump is one based on working conditions where most people have holidays of 10 days. This is really dangerous territory. We need to fight him on that territory, having let go of the divide that's torn us apart, which is Leave and Remain.
Thank you. Lisa?
Well, I believe that we're maybe outside the European Union, but our future lies with Europe, not just on jobs, but on climate change, on the refugee crisis, on medical research, and on skills. And we've got to go out and win that argument and learn the lessons from the last few years. When that referendum was called, I knew we were going to lose it. Not because I'm particularly far-seeing or prescient, but because I live in Wigan and you could hear it and you could feel it from lifelong socialists, because we've never gone out and made the argument, and so we certainly weren't winning it. And we're about to leave the EU and do a trade deal with the US, which will put at risk all of the rights that we fought for in this labour movement for 100 years. The minimum wage, health and safety laws that have kept people alive, environmental protections, these are all now at stake. The answer to remaining competitive but protecting those things is education, education, education. There is a reason the North East car industry will survive, and that is because the skills base that you have here is second to none. So we've got to go out, not just to defend some of the things that we've won before, but to get on the front foot, to take on the Tories, and to show this country that there is an alternative.
Thank you. Becky?
What we don't do is spend the next 4 years waiting to tell our communities that they got it wrong in the referendum result. Look how terrible it is. Because we saw what that happened in the general election. We've got a duty now as a Labour Party to set out a positive vision of what Britain can look like outside of the European Union. And yes, that means getting a good trade deal. Yes, that means scrutinising what the government are doing and making sure that they're not rolling back on workers' rights, environmental protections, health and safety, consumer protections. But it also means looking beyond the trade deal, looking at what the jobs of the future are going to look like in this region and what our quality of life is going to be. And that means a green industrial revolution. It means a real and comprehensive industrial strategy. It means investment in our infrastructure, rail, mail, water. It means making sure that our education system is lifelong and free, so that everyone is given the skills that they need to participate in the economy of the future. And it means showing people that their lives are going to get better, that their children's lives are always going to be better than their own, because that hope at the moment is gone for most people. They'll never hope that their children will be able to have a better life than them. And we've got a duty to reset that belief.
Thank you. You touched on this a little bit, but more detail. The government has created a hostile environment for immigrants and asylum seekers. How would you oppose this, and what would your priorities be in these areas? Lisa?
This is really personal to me because my dad came to this country from India in the 1950s and found that he couldn't find somewhere to live, that he couldn't marry who he chose to, that he couldn't drink in his local pub. And it led him to go on to become involved in the race relations struggle and later to help Roy Jenkins to write the Race Relations Act, one of the greatest gifts that Labour's ever given to this country. But if we're honest, what has happened in the last few years has really started to unravel. And when I worked with child refugees and immigrants, I saw how under Labour we didn't do enough to create a welcoming environment for immigrants. Too often we had the good refugee and the bad asylum seeker, the good immigrant and the bad immigrant. Labour must never go back to a time when we were putting immigration slogans on mugs. Now is the moment that we have to stand up and fight for the compassionate, decent country we know that we can be. And I start from the point of view that it's no use hiding like Donald Trump or Boris Johnson do, saying I'm not a racist. You are either a racist or an anti-racist. It requires you to take an active stand. That is why I spoke out about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. That is why I will always stand up and champion the rights of people, whichever background they come from, in this country. We are an anti-racist party and we must shout it loudly and proudly.
Thank you.
Well, look, I'm the daughter of migrants from Ireland, and my parents came here many years ago and are proud of living here, proud of working hard to contribute to our economy. And we've got to be honest, migration has brought huge benefits to this country. But when people in Salford told me how angry they were, that they couldn't get a GP appointment, that their school was asking for money to pay for their kids' books, that their children were on housing waiting lists and couldn't get a house or a home to live in, when they couldn't get decent public services provided when they needed it, I told them they were right to be angry, but this wasn't immigration. It was 10 years of a pernicious Tory government starving our public services of the funding that they need to provide that basic quality of life. Now, we're not in power, and we're not going to be in power for 4 years, potentially. And the government is setting out a new immigration system. So we're going to have to fight hard to make sure that it's based on values, not targets, that it defends the rights of EU citizens here and those UK citizens abroad, that it ends the hostile environment, ends no recourse to public funds, upholds the right to family reunion, and meets our international obligations on refugees. Nothing less will do. And we need to make the positive case for immigration in our communities and not be afraid to do it.
Thanks very much. Claire?
The government's taking completely the wrong approach on immigration by equating what you earn with what you're worth. And it's really offensive. In the intensive care unit where my wife's mother was, there was a young girl 2 beds down who's been there since New Year's Eve. And her family have done a chart above the bed which records the nationality of everybody who's cared for her. They're up to 51 different nationalities. 51! And anybody who wants to make the argument that immigration is all about how much you earn should go into that hospital and have a word with some of those nurses, because it's deeply, deeply offensive. We need to change the debate and not scapegoat those that have come to live with us, to be our family and our friends and be part of our communities. They are not responsible for low wages, for poor housing, overcrowded schools. Don't scapegoat them. Not a hostile environment, a welcoming environment. I want people in this country to be able to work in other countries, and I want people from other countries to be able to work here. I want people in this country to be able to study in other countries, and people in other countries to come and study here, and I want families to be able to live together, whether they choose to live here or elsewhere. They are our principles, and we've got to shout them loud and hard, because Johnson is dangerous and he's going down a right-wing track.
Thank you very much. Good one. Okay. As leader, what would you immediately change within the party? And once elected as Prime Minister, what would your first priority policy change be and why? Becky?
Well, the most important one is stamping out inequality, and I probably need longer than a minute to answer this question because there's not one thing that I'll do as Prime Minister to achieve that. It involves a fundamental transformation of our economy. It means a shifting of power and wealth into the hands of our communities and not the top 1% who currently enjoy most of our wealth. It means properly funding our public services so that they are the building blocks to aspiration. So no matter where you come from, whatever your postcode, whatever your income group, you have the tools to do well in life. You'll have a decent home, a car, the ability to go on holiday and have that fundamental standard of life that we should all enjoy.
Yep. Yeah.
As leader of the party, my three priorities would be to unite our party. Unite our party, be a very effective opposition against Johnson straight away. We haven't got years here to think about what we're going to do. We've got to do it absolutely now, and we've got to forge our way to victory. In order to create that space, we have to deal with anti-Semitism, because people are not going to believe we'll do this until we deal with it. As Prime Minister, a Labour Prime Minister, I would proudly lay out a radical programme for change, real change, for the late 2020s and the 2030s. And how proud would you be when we have that Queen's speech setting out all the radical things that we're going to do to change the lives of millions of people in this country? So the first job is leader of the Labour Party with my objectives, but then the sights are on what we will do as a Labour government coming into power to...
Well, my answer for the party and the country is the same. It's power, because the problem that we've got in Labour is the same as the problem that I've seen in this country, which is that a small handful of men, and it is always men, sitting behind a desk in central London, make far too many decisions about a party that was built from the grassroots, from the grounds up, that gave us reach into every part of this country, in every nation and region, and I want us to become that again. So no more parachutes, no more stitch-ups. CLPs will select their own candidates. They'll decide how resources are spent. Regions will have more power to decide where resources go rather than those decisions being dictated from central London, and we'll go out on the ground and create change again. That means we have to become a welcoming environment for people. That is why anti-Semitism will be my absolute top priority as a party, and better representation amongst disabled people, people from LGBT backgrounds, people from BAME backgrounds and working class people as well, so that we can go out into the country and show that we will empower this country and build the self-confident nation we can be, because we haven't just talked the talk, we've walked the walk.
Thank you. Very easy one now. As Prime Minister, could you deploy Trident? Keir.
Well, we've had two elections under Jeremy Corbyn with a manifesto commitment to retain Trident, and I wouldn't disturb that policy. As for answering the question, nobody who wants to be Prime Minister would ever answer that question. That's the whole point. Seriously. It's the last thing you should do is answer that question. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I respect Keir for that, but I take a different view, because I think the first duty of any aspiring Prime Minister is to show that you'll keep the country safe. That's why I said when I was asked that I would push the button, but I voted against Trident renewal. And I voted against Trident renewal because I'm a multilateralist. I believe that nuclear weapons make the world less safe and make us less safe as a country. And so leading the world in efforts to rid ourselves of nuclear weapons is one of the proudest legacies of the last Labour government, and it's something that we have to stand up for. And that's why I voted against it when it came to Parliament, because I do not believe that renewing Trident and giving the Tories a blank cheque to do so without any programme of multilateral disarmament makes us more safe, it makes us less safe, and we should stand up and say so. But you have to ask yourself too, how it is that you would become a Prime Minister that was so thoroughly useless that you had shredded all of our international relationships and strengths as a nation, so that all you had left to you to keep the country safe was to nuke most of the world. I mean, this is a nonsense. And these sorts of questions, on that I do agree with Keir. This is ridiculous. Labour can do better than that. Let's go out and set the bar higher and keep the world safe the best way that has ever been achieved, through reaching out and diplomacy.
Look, the primary role of any Prime Minister is to keep its citizens safe. And we should make that clear as Labour Party leaders, whichever one of us is chosen. And I'll do whatever it takes to keep people in this country safe. But our whole foreign policy has to be aimed at trying to never reach the point that that is ever a decision that a Prime Minister has to take. It's the path to mutually assured destruction, and I think all of us in this room know that. So that means preventing conflicts from escalating. It means using diplomacy and respecting international law. And it means playing our part more vocally in ridding the world of nuclear weapons, honouring our commitments to international treaties, and making sure that other countries around the world do the same. We know that Trump is refusing to commit to serious action on this, and we need to be the voice of reason here.
The next one is, of which professional achievement are you most proud? Lisa.
I think it was a few years ago when, before I came into Parliament, I worked with child refugees at the Children's Society. I'd started out working with homeless teenagers at the charity Centrepoint, but what we found during that time was, because the last Labour government was doing huge amounts of work for children in care, fewer care leaves were ending up in our hostels, but at the same time, we were being bloody awful to child refugees and their families, and because of that we had far too many young people on the streets. So I went to where the trouble was, I went to where the problems were, and I took the argument on at its core, and I spent 4 years working in Yarlswood with child refugees, taking the government to court over their treatment of destitute children, taking them out of the Children Act so that they couldn't claim access child benefits, so that they were starved effectively out of the country. And that for me was a real moment, because I will always stand up and fight for what is right, even at times when it pits me against the leadership of my own party. That is the courage that I believe that we need to show, the courage of our convictions, the values. And we did get those kids out of Yarlswood. And for a brief time, we shut down that family wing of that immigration detention centre. I still know some of those children now. They've gone on to be the most brilliant campaigners for human rights that you could ever believe. That is the legacy that we need to leave in the world, and I am determined that under my leadership, Labour will do it.
Becky?
Well, I have professional achievements every Friday in my constituency office when I do the job that I'm employed to do, helping constituents against the ravages of this Conservative government. But if you ask for me to pick out one specific thing, I'd say it was our green industrial revolution. Now, we're not there yet because we're not in government, but this was a comprehensive, detailed plan that would have created jobs, reindustrialised parts of the country. It would have created wind farms, it would have created solar farms, it would have brought our energy networks into public ownership, and it would have provided that vision of the future, because it wasn't just about tackling climate change. It was a recognition that Labour doesn't win elections when we don't have a vision, when we don't have big ideas. When you look at when we have won in 45, it was the post-war reconstruction in the NHS. After that, with Wilson, it was the white heat of technology. In 1997, it was education and aspiration. And the next Labour government will win because they set out a green industrial revolution, a basis to improve all of our lives and our aspirations. So I am proud of that, but we need to keep fighting for it.
This is a really good and interesting question. I've spent 20 years of my life fighting the death penalty across the world, particularly in the Caribbean, but also in African states, including Uganda. And the example I'll give you is from Uganda, because we went out to Kampala, where there were 419 people on death row. And we formed teams with the local lawyers, all acting for free, to see whether we could get them into a position where they weren't going to be executed by hanging. And that's for women as well as men. Of those 419, we went to see them in Kampala and had a big meeting with them. They'd actually formed communities in their prison. And amongst other things, I said to them, how many of you have been here for more than 10 years? And a whole forest of arms went up. How many of you didn't have a lawyer when you were convicted and sentenced to death? Whole number of hands went up. How many of you were under 18 when you were sentenced to death? And a number of hands went up. And that's what we were up against. And over 2 to 3 years, we fought a massive battle in Uganda, and every single one of them is now off death row. And I'm really proud of that.
Okay, for the next few years, Labour has to hold the government to account. What would make you the most effective leader of the opposition? Becky?
Well, I'll start with the obvious thing. I don't think Boris Johnson will be able to tackle a working class woman from the north, saying things how they are. Now, don't be lulled into a false sense of security about Boris Johnson being a buffoon, by the way, because he's not a buffoon. And this is a carefully crafted character that he has put forward to make him appeal to our community, so that many people you know probably wouldn't mind going for a pint with him down the pub. And that's dangerous, because he wants us to fall into a trap. He wants us to move away from our ambitions, scale back our visions of the future, and look like part of the establishment, so that his activists can go around County Durham and right across the North East and say the Labour Party isn't for you. We're the party of the people. So I am the leader with that vision. I'm not scaling back my ambition, because I know what it takes to make our communities' lives better. That's what brought me into politics. It's what drives every single thing that I do, and it's what brought you to this meeting today. So never be afraid of standing up for what you believe in and setting out that vision, because that's what will win the next general election.
Yeah.
Johnson wants to be treated as a cuddly clown, and he's not. He's really dangerous, and we need to take him on. He's a very dangerous man. We've already touched on in this discussion on what he's done about refugee rights, on immigration, and his complete absence on the flood. So he needs to be confronted, and he needs to be confronted in Parliament across the dispatch box. He does not like that. That's why he didn't do the Andrew Neil interview. And you've seen me at the dispatch box, I hope, when I set my mind to confronting the government, and that's the approach I would take to him. Taking him apart, step by step, exposing him for what he really is. And I'd want my whole front bench doing it and my back bench doing it, and not just in Parliament, but across the country in every community. And I want you, every time you turn on the radio or the television under my leadership, to hear powerful Labour voices winning the argument, where you can say they're right about that, and everybody can see they're right about that, because we've got to inch our way back week by week, month by month, because I don't want to just take him on across the dispatch box. I want to see the back of him at the next general election.
Well, I think the most powerful moment that I've seen in the House of Commons since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister was when Tan Desai, the first turban Sikh, stood up and called him out for the shameful comments he'd made about Muslim women resembling letterboxes. So I wonder what Boris Johnson would do with a half-Indian woman from the north facing him across the dispatch box. And the truth is, he's not a clown, but he is a coward. And that's why I chose to do my first interview in this campaign with Andrew Neil, because under my leadership, Labour will never run scared of the BBC or Andrew Neil. We are not scared of them, and we never will be. But, you know, I learned 10 years ago as a newly elected MP when I took on Michael Gove with his special advisor, Dominic Cummings, and we exposed what was happening in that department. We sent the Information Commissioner in to seize their hard drives. We got them wrapped over the knuckles for the use of private emails. We instituted a bullying investigation, and we managed to get Cummings out of that department and stop him doing damage to children across this country. I learned that you can take these people on and you can win, and they do not understand understand our communities, our red wall communities. They think we want investment, we want real power. I've spent 10 years being that bridge between different parts of our electoral coalition. I get it, I understand it, and I'm going to go out and provide not just an opposition, but an alternative to this wretched Tory government.
You'll be glad to know we're nearly there. What makes your rivals a brilliant candidate for leader? Okay.
I really want to pay tribute to Lisa and Becky in this, because both of them, I think, are excellent candidates, sincerely and genuinely putting forward very powerful cases that they think are right for our party, for our movement and the country. And frankly, if we can demonstrate in the course of these weeks and months over this leadership contest that we can have a respectful debate where we take different positions, but we don't take lumps out of each other, I think that is an excellent thing for the future of our country. And whichever one of us actually wins this, what you're seeing on display here is the leadership of the Labour Party. Vote for it.
That was so nice. I'm starting to think he might give me his first preference. So I like and respect both of the people standing next to me on this stage. And I've actually come to like and respect them even more since this contest has gone on. At one point, Becky and I said, when this is over, we'll go and have a drink, and we'll have one drink for every hustings we've done, which is a lot of drinks. But it's the same point, really, is that I've seen 4 leadership contests close up, and I was determined when this started that this one was going to be different. Because what I've seen is briefings against each other, I've seen the undermining and attacking of one another, and actually there is much that we agree on this stage. And where we disagree, that is a good thing. That is better for the Labour Party, because the Labour Party, I believe in, is a broad, strong team that is united but not uniform, where we challenge one another, where we challenge our ambition and to raise our game, and we go out into the country and have reach into every part of this country and every community as a consequence, and we can win. And we only win because we treat each other decently, we challenge one another, and we win together.
Well, look, Keir and Lisa are brilliant, and we all get on with each other in real life, despite what you might see on Twitter or anywhere else. But I would be happy to serve under any of their leaderships, and I know that as you as members would expect all Labour Party MPs and Labour members to do the same thing. Because we don't agree all the time. You know, our visions might be slightly different, we might have different opinions on different things that have been discussed today. But ultimately, that's a good thing for the Labour Party. We are a broad church, as they say, and it's good to have these debates on policy and push each other in different directions, but we do it in private. We don't do it on the media, and we do not undermine the elected leader of the party once this election's taken place.
Yeah. Because of how brilliant this has been chaired, we have a little bit of time, so I will ask one supplemental question. And you've probably half answered it. I'll start with Keir. Would you offer, if you win, would you offer the 2 other candidates the job? And if you don't win and you were offered a job by the eventual winner, would you take it?
Well, last time this was asked, I said we shouldn't be jostling for positions on the platform. I would happily offer both these brilliant candidates a top job in the shadow cabinet, and I'd happily serve them if they wanted me to do the same.
Last time we were asked this, Keir tried to be diplomatic, and it ended up with Becky saying to him, "That just makes me really sad." Yeah, of course I would. I mean, some of you will know that I left the shadow cabinet because of the factional infighting that was happening within the leader's office and on the backbenches. I don't believe in factions. I believe in broad, strong teams. And I went off to run the Manchester Gorton by-election for Jeremy straight afterwards because he asked me to and because I'm a team player. I like both of these people. I respect them. I would want them in my shadow cabinet doing big jobs, particularly because the work ethic that you have to show to get to this stage is just absolutely phenomenal, and they deserve it and they've earned it. But I would equally be happy to serve alongside them in whatever role they chose to give me. I did say this morning that if there's some kind of job going around 1990s pop music, I think I could do a particularly good job, but I'd be happy to serve in whatever capacity I could be useful.
I would. I think they're both brilliant, and I would do whatever I was asked and whatever it takes to make sure, if I didn't become leader, to make sure that we were elected as the next Labour government.
Okay, you've now got 2 minutes to finally sell yourselves. Kaya.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your questions. We've had hundreds of questions at Hustings across the United Kingdom, 3 Hustings this weekend. Lots and lots of questions. One central question, which is how we're going to win the next general election. Because the election we just lost was devastating. Absolutely devastating for the MPs we lost, who should be with us, for candidates who should be with us in Parliament, but devastating above all else for the millions of people, and I mean millions, who desperately needed change. After 10 years of Tory rule, they desperately needed change in that election, and they're not now going to get it. And we have to have them absolutely in mind. And we've lost 4 general elections in a row. Now, I came into politics to change lives for the better for millions of people. I believe that's why we're in the Labour Party, the wider movement. That's what we want to achieve, and you don't achieve that in opposition. You don't achieve that in losing elections. In my first 12 months as an MP, I voted 172 times, and I lost 171. That isn't changing lives. So we've got a mountain to climb. We've given policy answers. You may think I prefer this policy, that policy. The truth is, if we don't win next time, many of the things we've spoken about won't happen. So we've got to be focused. And we've got a choice. You've got a choice, because this is your decision, and rightly so. We can mope around, take lumps out of each other, blame each other, say it's your fault, this was the reason. Division, factionalism, we're good at that. We practice it a lot. And we'll lose. Or we can pull together, rebuild. We can do what those that went before us did. Labour governments don't come out of nowhere. They come out of a party and a movement that gets together, unites, and says the next chapter is for us. We're responsible for what happens next. If we want history to change, we've got to do it. If we want to get from where we are now to where we need to be, we need to make a positive decision to do it. And how proud would you be if you took that decision? And history was written, and Labour went back into power to change those millions of lives for the better. And you could look back and say, I was part of that. I took the decision to do that. That's why I'm standing to be leader of the Labour Party.
Lisa.
This is the county where the remarkable journey of a working-class boy who became one of the world's greatest opera singers inspired the movie Billy Elliot and inspired the world. Thomas Allen's story is a reminder that while talent is widespread, opportunity isn't. For every Idris Elba and Julie Walters, there are countless working-class actors, scriptwriters, directors who never were. There's a magic that happens in seeing a child when the lights go down. The audience disappears, and she finds her voice. But a decade of Tory vandalism, stripping enrichment funding from our schools, arts, culture, youth clubs, grants from our communities, has closed the curtain and written whole areas out of our national story. When the Arts Council spent £8 in Islington for every pound in the former coalfield communities combined, it erases the Jarrow marchers and the Durham mums who retraced those steps 78 years later to defend our NHS. Their fight is ours, for a country where everyone has voice and has value. It's how we'll rebuild not the red wall, but the red bridge that stretches across every nation and region of this country, where the greatest asset we have is the people who live there. The Tories say we're economic units. We say every person matters. That is why now, in this moment of shattering defeat, we must find the ambition that just 3 times in history took us into power and changed the world. And we will go out with the courage of our convictions. In Redcar, Bishop Auckland, Blythe Valley and North West Durham, we will fight for our communities and for the Thomas Allens of today to be heard. We will win, and when we win, they will know that we did it together.
Here in the North East and in so many communities, the reality of our economy is laid bare. For too many, pay is too low, work is too insecure, bills are too high, housing is too expensive, and too few jobs are rewarding. But I'll tell you this, retreating from popular policies that provide answers to these problems and shrinking from our ambitions won't make us more credible. And it's no route to victory. We need to set out how we connect our socialism with a right to realise your aspirations, whatever your background. We must listen to people's anger at Westminster and decisions being taken by an out-of-touch elite and respond with a democratic revolution to hand back power across the country. We have to empower our members and rebuild our party to become part of our social fabric once again. And we can knit these things together with the politics of big ideas, like the Green Industrial Revolution, the politics of hope. Because the next election won't be about Brexit. But Boris Johnson and his advisers will want to convince voters that they aren't traditional Tories, and they'll claim that we're part of a failed establishment. Now, I know what went wrong, and I know what it takes to win. And we've got a motto in Salford. The welfare of the people is the highest law. I live my life by it, and I'll never give up fighting for that future that my community deserves. So I know that you were all devastated at the election result, but I want you to say you stared defeat in the face, you felt the pain, but you never gave up what you believed in, and you were part of a new path to power that runs through social justice, delivers a green economy, unites our people, and delivers their hopes and dreams. That's what the Labour Party should be for.
Thanks very much. I think we can be assured whoever wins will be in safe hands, and it's down to us to make sure that we get together and bring about the change that we all want for the people of this country. Whoever wins, I'll tell you now, you will be invited to come and speak at the Durham Miners Gala. Unlike some members of Parliament in this part of the world. Hope to see you all there. So thank you very much, and thank you for behaving yourselves. You've been great. Thank you.